an announcement. We're going to start with the Gemara on Shabbos, Ayin Hamid Beis. For those of you who didn't get your copy of Haggadah Pesach, there's good news and bad news. The good news is you could still get a copy. The bad news is even those who got their copies before Passover were unable to use theirs on Passover because we had a catastrophic fail trying to bring Korban Pesach this year. Anybody remember where they were a few weeks ago this Monday? What was it? Monday 3 weeks ago was Erev Pesach. What? Sorry, Monday 4 weeks ago. What? No, that was Motzei Shabbos. The so-called Iranian attack was Motzei Shabbos. The Korban Pesach was supposed to be Monday 4 weeks ago, 4 weeks from today. So what was the plan? We were supposed to have Korban Pesach, and as the rabbi described, Rabbi Avi Grossman and the Chasam Sofer assumed that there's no real halachic impediment to bringing Korban Pesach; it's just a political one. So they had called for us to gather at Kikar Tzahal, which is just outside of the municipality's building across the street from the walkway to Jaffa Gate. And it turns out only 3 people showed up for that. There were other people who were supposed to bring the sacrificial animals, and they were all arrested in turn, making their way to the Old City. So there were 3 regular people waiting there. Me, Arnon Segel, and some guy who read about this on the internet and wanted to see what would be happening. So it was kind of disappointing. When it came time to offer Korban Pesach, many Jews, but certainly not enough Jews, met at the Temple Mount and were there and ready to do it. But the problem was they didn't have that many Kohanim, and all the people who wanted to bring sacrificial animals had already been stopped. So Korban Pesach didn't happen. And like I said, the problem was there weren't enough Am Yisrael who wanted it to happen and who were ready to make it happen. So that's a problem. I pray that by this time next year, we're supposed to have Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is only if you went through with Korban Pesach the right way. And there were minorities who didn't get to do Korban Pesach. But Pesach Sheni is going to be irrelevant this year because Pesach Rishon did not happen. Okay? So we didn't get to use the Haggadah Pesach this year. God willing, next year, I have a promise. Hayom bid kolo tishbau. If we all make it happen, we will get to use Haggadah Pesach next year. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully it'll happen. Can't force anybody, but just to know. Well, yeah. Wait, now?
Mashiach comes in this
Now.
week.
Yeah. So the Tosefta asked this question. Tosefta says, "Nitam lehem Yisrael livnosis base b'chira between the 2 Pesachs," and there were Tanoim who said, "Yes, they will do a Pesach Sheni." And they say that's what Chizkiyahu HaMelech actually did. They disagree with the whole account. You know that Chizkiyahu HaMelech says that he made Passover in the 2nd month. So the way our Gemara has it, the way the Rambam says, it means he decided that even though it was time for Nisan to start, nope, Adar Sheni starting. And that would have resulted in the type of case that the Gemara describes in the Second Temple times where they had already observed Purim, and now they have to do another Purim. That sometimes happened, but they didn't have Purim back then. In this case, instead of he made an Adar Sheni and pushed off Pesach by a month. That's what Chizkiyahu HaMelech did. But there were Tanaim who said, no, he basically told everybody, we're all going to do Pesach Sheni instead of Pesach Rishon, just cancel Rishon. But that's not the way the Mishnah has it. And that's rejected by law. There are Tanaim who said such a thing. And they said, no, even Chizkiyahu HaMelech didn't do such a thing. And then there are Tanaim who say, even if he did do such a thing, that he told everybody to do Pesach Sheni, that's not the halacha. The halacha is, Pesach Sheni only happens if Pesach Rishon went through like it was supposed to. So the halacha, as decided by the poskim, is that God willing, the temple should be rebuilt today, and the Talmud should happen today. But on Wednesday afternoon, there will not be a Pesach Sheni because this year there was no Pesach Rishon. Why was there a Pesach Rishon? Like the Rambam says, you don't need the temple to offer a sacrifice. All you need is the place of the altar, and the sacrificial service precedes the rebuilding of the temple. So it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's a explicit Tosefta. We're going to talk about, God willing, on Thursday. Well, yes. Okay.
All those that were carrying Yosef Atzma.
Okay, that's one opinion. That's the opinion that might even be rejected because we said that they were Tamei Mace, right? Someone was Tamei Mace. If if we assume, like it says explicitly in the Torah, that the Jews got to Mount Sinai on the first of the third month after the Exodus, we also discussed this last time. They got to Mount Sinai on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. A few days later, they received the Torah. They only left Mount Sinai when in Iyar the next year. They stuck around for 11 months. So the tabernacle was built 10 months after they got to Mount Sinai. So if you're describing the people who were in charge of literally carrying Moshe Rabbeinu's, Yosef's remains, Moshe Rabbeinu was officially in charge, but then obviously he had other people helping him because he couldn't just schlep them all around the entire time.
Because he listened to a shred.
Because they had already been encamping at Mount Sinai now for many months, there was no reason for anybody to have become contaminated with contact with Yosef's remains because they hadn't been traveling all this time. They're just sitting there, no reason to become contaminated the week before Passover. So that's a little bit of a weak teretz. Instead, they say it was Mishal and El-Safan who were in charge of burying Nadav and Avihu. But that's also problematic because Nadav and Avihu fell on the 1st of Nisan. And this commandment to bring Korban Pesach was on the 14th of Nisan, which is more than enough time for people who have been contaminated to have purified themselves. So it must have been, pshat is, people used to die in the Midbar also. They died of old age. People always die of old age, just like people are born. It always happens. It's olam kimina go naheg. It doesn't say anywhere in our sages' writings that people miraculously all managed to live. All the people who left Egypt had some sort of miraculous existence that no one died of old age. Okay? And no one was born. People were being born and people were also dying. So we have to assume like that. Okay, let's see this. We're going to look at the Gemara over here. I checked the calendar. Wednesday is Pesach Sheni, and it also turns out that Friday evening is Shabbos. We have another Shabbos this week, so we should get ready some Hilchos Shabbos. What? Yeah, so get ready. It's kind of funny. Shabbos happens every week, but some people are still, even though they already went through this many other times, comes Shabbos and they're still not ready. You think you gave people warning. There's some people who went down to the wire. They would have gotten ready the day before. Okay, what are you going to do? Yeah, there's always that. That's I like aiming for Shabbos. How we are. It's good. What exactly? Almost, thank God, where I live, it's almost a competition who could take in Shabbos the earliest. And there's so many early minyanim, thank God. And there are people who do it exaggerate. They get together 75 minutes before sunset that would be plug time. They get ready 75 minutes before candlelighting for davening. Okay, so that's a full 115 minutes before sundown for mincha before Shabbos. Okay, make sure to do it early. What line are we? What exact line should we start with? What does everybody want to hear? There's a line here. We're talking about tanning hides, right? That they used to do that in the temple times, and also to build the Mishkan. Why were they tanning hides in the Mishkan? What did they use a hide for? So it says they built the actual tabernacle out of orot elim odamim, which means red dyed ram skins. Okay, so you can't just take the skin off a ram and say, okay, now it's leathery and we could use it to make a tent, right? You need to process it. One of the things they used to do was they would put all sorts of salts and chemicals on the hide in order to make it tougher and also to preserve it. Many of us are wearing leather shoes. You're not worried about the leather rotting on your feet, right? Why not? Because it's been preserved. And many of us used to wear leather yarmulkes back in the States. Maybe some we still have some leather yarmulkes, right? Our belts also. So how do you do that? So the Gemara here says that processing the leather was actually a malach on Shabbos. The Mishnah mentions taking the hide and salting the hide, or in this case, ma'abedo was tanning the hide. So obviously, it wasn't just table salt they're using. There's all sorts of stuff they would put on there, even dog poop. But that's what you say. That's a ma'abed. Hainu moleach v'hainu me'abed. Salting the hide is very similar to the ma'abed. There might as well be the same process. The tanner puts all these things on the hide, or basically puts it into a vat with all these other ingredients, and has to wait a while for it. So there's no real difference. That's the kasha of the Gemara. So Rabbi Yochanan says, they both say, Apik chad binahu va'ayol sirtut. You know what? Go back to your Mishnah, take out whichever one of those malachas you want that seems sort of redundant, and instead insert sirtut. What is sirtut? Sirtut, for those of us who do safras, they take the cloth and they score the cloth. They take a sharp instrument, not to cut it, but to make lines. So in this case, it's a type of scoring. Why would they score things? Why would they score a hide? Because you want to know where to cut it. It's not necessarily to write on it, but it could be used for both. Is there a Rashi here that we should see? No. Okay. So they say change the Mishnah. Omar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Hayman de Molach Bisra Chayav Mishu Ma'abed. You have a man who salts meat, so he's basically tanning the meat on Shabbos. So that should be a malacha. Why would a person salt the meat? Sorry, hold on. I want to read this Rashi. Atu melicha lav tzorech ibudhu. The salting, that's part of the process of tanning. That's what their assumption was. And they say va'al sirtut lefisha derech haratzanim kishahu balachotcho. These ratzanim. What's a ratzan? A ratzan is the type of person who works with leather. From the word ritzuah, leather is used to make straps. The most important thing that people would use in the olden days is they wear shoes. Not all of their shoes look like our shoes. Shoes look like sandals. Sandals are made of the sole, which is leather, and then a series of straps to hold it onto the foot, and they even wind around the bottom part of the leg. Anybody ever see a chalitza shoe? You've seen it?
Actually, yes.
A chalitza shoe has to fit the old definition of shoe, which was this sandal with straps that go up around the calf of the leg. So anybody who's had the unfortunate privilege of doing chalitza, why is it unfortunate? Because it means he lost his brother who had no kids. So it shouldn't happen to anybody. And if it does happen to it, it should be better perhaps that one of the brothers perform yibum. That's the result. Chalitza is like the last option on the list. So if you have to perform a chalitza, you can't use your Nike or your Rockport shoe. You have to use a special one that they keep in the Bati Din that fits the type of shoe they used to use in the old days. So that's a ratzanim. So we say the ratzanim, the shoemakers, what are they doing? He's going to be cutting the leather. He has to score it, actually mark off exactly how he's going to cut it in order to make it wider, longer, whatever it's going to be. Afterwards, he passes the knife along where he made the sketch, the sirtut. So too they did with the skins they used to make the Mishkan. Remember, if you take off a whole ram skin, it wouldn't actually be, a nice workable rectangle that you can combine with another one. It would have, little imperfections there, especially the parts where the limbs used to be, right? They take off the skin whole. So they'd have to cut off parts. That's what Rashi is describing here. So back to the Gemara. Rabba bar Rav Huna said that a person salts his meat, it's like he is tanning the meat. There are two reasons a person would salt meat. Okay? The two forms of salting meat are the first salting. What's the first salting? The kind you don't do at home anymore, which they used to do. Well, to get rid of the blood. So that involves soaking the meat to soften it, and then applying a very nice thick coating of kosher salt that draw out the blood, and then you have to rinse off that meat, and then it's ready for cooking. But then there's a second salting. The second salting is so that it tastes good. Okay, so which of these is he talking about? Is he talking about putting a little bit of salt on your food, or the heavy-duty salting that we do in order to take out all of the blood? Now, it's a question, if you would do that, let's say you had shechted meat before Shabbos. Technically speaking, you don't have to cook your meat, right? You could eat meat raw, although it's not derech eretz to do so. Because Al said there were Kohanim who would eat meat raw. They were not squeamish about it. They had daton yafeh, right? It's a euphemism. There were some Kohanim who were capable of doing such a thing. Even nowadays, they have like certain dishes that are made of ground beef that's basically uncooked. Okay, so let's read on. We'll see more clues to what he's talking about. Rava Amar ein ibud ba'ochalim, and Rava says there's no such thing as tanning food. Okay, must be we're talking about the heavy duty salting, but you don't do that to your food. Okay, there's no such thing. If a person were to over salt his food, or do this, for whatever reason, that we wouldn't consider this a malacha that applies to food, because that's not what people do to their food. They don't want to make it. They don't want to take their meat and make it so processed that it's basically shoe leather. Matter of fact, that's what we mock. A person who's eating a steak that's overdone, right? And it's too hard to eat. What do we call it? Like too leathery, right? So that's not a malacha. That's actually destructive. Okay, let's see here. Omar Ravashi vafilu Rabba bar Rafuna lo Amar ella de kaboyle the urcha. He was talking about preserving it for the way. What is for the way? Shirashi says Shemol Harbe. He's salting it so much because I guess he wants to take it on a trip, okay? Make it into a jerky or something like that. Preserving the meat. Aval levita lo mashvi inish mechle eitz. No one who wants to just eat the meat at home is going to turn his meat into wood. Okay. Another thing, the leather is too hard. You ruin your meat by over salting it. It's dried out. It's basically wood. You're not going to eat it. People don't do that, so that's not considered malacha. That's destructive. Bottom line, well, if you have, let's say, some fine meat to eat on Shabbos, you could still salt it a little bit on your plate. And if you were to say, you know what, I have a trip to England in 2 days, so I'll take some of the Shabbos meat and I'll salt it heavily in order to preserve it so I can put it into a plastic bag and take it with me on the plane. You're also not going to do that because that'll basically ruin your meat. So it's destructive. It's not considered processing the meat. Okay, was there a Tosfos here? No. The Tosfos says, Ein ibud ba'ochlin, ein la'atir mikan melichat ochlin. Perhaps you're going to tell me, wait, there's a heter now. There's no concept of processing ochlin. So maybe I could pickle my food. What they used to do, and what do people do now? If you wish to pickle cucumbers or some other vegetables, mostly cucumbers, what do you do to pickle them? Apply a lot of salt. You're going to salt them heavily with some water, and you're going to stick them in a jar and let the pickling process happen, right? Is that allowed on Shabbos? Well, you just said there's no ibud for ochlin, and you could salt your meat a little bit on your plate. But the Tosfos says don't think that you could start making pickles on Shabbos. Well,
I would think,
mm-hmm.
if you know for sure, you got all of them.
On Shabbos. Okay.
It's much better. But even if there's one small pickle left over, you can't because you're preparing on Shabbat for after. Like that.
Well, yes, that'd be one thing. Even doing non-malachas. But Tosfos here, I believe, is trying to say that doing pickling would be a form of a malacha. Now you can't do it on Shabbos, even if you intend to eat it on Shabbos. Let's read what Tosfos says. Okay.
Tosfos explain.
The Aser midrabanan melicha. Okay. Aser drabanan says it's Perek Shmos Rasim. The Vafilu biyom tov Aser b'Perek Kamat Devetza. If you're trying to preserve foods like the pickling process, by the way, how long did it take to pickle according to Chazal? Minimum time to pickle something is 24 hours. It's like a form of cooking. Kavush k'mevushel. So the sages prohibited such a thing. Okay? Yeah. The Rabbanon. It's an Isser de Rabbanon. So you can't start pickling things on Shabbos. You can't look at this Gemara and say, okay, so I'll pickle. What else are people pickling nowadays? They pickle salmon? Yeah, tongue.
Tongue is very common.
Yeah, pickled tongue. Okay. That was the first example. I liked it. You used to get, I don't know, they have mixed pickles here. It's a jar. It's not just cucumbers. They also put in some carrots and cauliflower in there, and even some tomatoes. Those are good. Yeah. So that's similar. That's much more similar to what Chazal described. Why did Chazal describe this? Because they talk about with regards to Shemitah food, that there's all sorts of foods that have Kedusha Shvius, and he pickles them all together. And the problem with Kedusha Shvius is what? If you have any Otzar based in food from Shemitah, there is a time limit. Every particular food substance has its Sha'at Bi'ur, when you have to eventually get rid of it. So for the grapes and the wine, they say it's right before Passover. All the oats are based in and Kedusha Shvius you got to get rid of. So you have to look at every particular fruit and vegetable and see when's it gone. If you're talking about vegetables that are around all the time, like cucumbers, so there's no real Shas Biur, perhaps. But technically speaking, the natural apples, figs, other things, dates, whatever else people might be preserving, has a time limit. You have to know when that time limit in Eretz Yisrael is, and when that time comes, they actually put out various kashrus's, put out a calendar. They tell you, you can keep this Kedusha Shvius until this point. So Chazal had the case of a person who pickles all different types of foods in one jar. So they all absorb taste from the other. So now you have to be machmir that when one it's Shas beer comes. All of them are like that. They all absorb taste from the others. So that's what they're describing here. But yeah, basically. Kedusha Shvius.
I was here,
Yeah.
and I bought wine
Oh, yeah.
many years ago.
On Erev Pesach? On Erev Pesach? Okay.
No, it was Sukkot.
Okay.
I bought wine in Hebron. We were in Hebron. And I brought it back to Toronto. And I asked a price taker about Shlomo Miller.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to drink it here? And he said, yes, if we have to. But don't use it for Abdullah. Not allowed to use it for Abdullah. I can just drink it
Okay.
right? But I can't use it for Abdullah. But I don't remember. I'm sure he said to me, but make sure you finish it before.
Was it Kedusha Shvius?
Yes.
So that the surprise
It said
because
right on it, on the bottle.
you're not supposed to take Kedusha Shvius out of Eretz Yisrael.
I didn't know that.
Was it Heter Mechira?
Right.
Was it Heter Mechira maybe? And he's just being machmir for all things?
Yes.
Okay, so if it's Heter Mechira, so I can understand what he's saying. Now you have to treat it with the chumras of Kedusha Shvius and with the chumras of this. You know, they give them a heter. If the farmers need Heter Mechira to subsist, to survive the Shemitah, so they have to have people to whom to sell. Rabbi Soloveitchik and others said it's one thing for the farmers to rely on Heter on the Heter Mechira. It's another thing for you in Chutz La'aretz to say, oh, I need carrots, so I'll take Heter Mechira carrots. You have other carrots. You don't need to take them. But then again, who's going to buy the Israeli Heter Mechira carrots if not other Jews? No, it's a very tricky thing. Ikar Adin, if a person had Kedusha Shvius wine, comes Erev Pesach, he's got to get rid of that. And I was horrified to find 14 years ago, for example, that here at a store, I think a few blocks that way, they were selling Kedusha Shvius wine in the grocery store at Erev Pesach without doing beer to it. They're still selling it, which is pretty bad, among other things that they do wrong with the Kedusha Shvius wine. But they're supposed to give it, put it out on the street. According to Ramban, leave it free for all. That would be the beer. And according to Rambam, they'd have to pour it down the drainer, spill it onto the street.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, so that's a very complicated thing. Rabbi Kapach said that it's like the Rambam. You have to get rid of your Kedusha Shvius wine come Erev Pesach. Actually destroy it like you do the chametz.
They weren't selling it for wine for Seder.
Well, it doesn't matter for Seder or anything. You got to get rid of it. They should not be selling it.
But I hope they were not advertising it. Oh, look at the special wine we have for the Seder.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That would be much worse.
Okay, so they say that by Pesach, there's no wild grapes anymore in the field. If you didn't pick your grapes from your vine, so there would still be some grapes, raisined grapes on the vine for the animals to eat by that time. And by that time, it's gone, and then you have to get rid of it. So, well, okay, so if, let's say, it's the middle of the Shemitah year, and you have Kedusha Shvius wine, and Shas beer hasn't happened, so you're supposed to be drinking Kedusha Shvius wine at the Seder. Now you have this minhag of wasting wine. Perhaps you should not be wasting wine, period. Like Rabbi Miller was telling him, don't use it for Havdalah. What's wrong with using wine for Havdalah? No, he's assuming you're going to be Hasidish, and you're going to overflow your cup and waste some of that wine. So this is why I stopped overflowing my Havdalah cup. My wife used to tell me, Shefa, make it overflow. And I said, yeah, but there's Bal Tashchis. Even if we're talking about, let's say, the finest of wine, regular Kedem grape juice, which is the best stuff on earth, which we always use. So what would happen? I want to drink that. I don't want to pour it into a plate and then have someone dip some waxy and candle into there. I want to drink it. And then they said you can't use the Kedusha Shvius for Havdalah because now it's two Averos. You're wasting the Shvius and you're wasting the wine. Said, and it's not Bal Tashchis the rest of the time, even if it's not Kedusha Shvius. Okay? And God willing, we should take some Concord grapes and start growing them here in Eretz Yisrael, and it would be an improvement. But until that point, we're not there yet. But I don't understand how you could do this. Rabbi Bar-Hayim did not like and he said this, but I think still today he holds this way. You should not be pouring off wine for whatever reason during the Seder. It's a waste. It's Bal Tashchis. The Chachamim don't say to do such a thing. The sages don't say to do such a thing. It's problematic. I stopped doing it. I haven't done it in years. And it's a horrific thing. No. I don't do it at all, but my father-in-law does it. And he actually asked me, he was looking around, he had, grape juice and he had some cheaper wine, which is like the 4% sweet wine, like the buzz stuff. So he came to me, he said he wants a bottle of nice red wine, dry red wine for the Seder. So I provided him one. And then he takes out this huge Ilionovikos that has a capacity of about 3 liters or so. And he sits there with my mother-in-law. Every time there's a makkah, he spills it like a cup. And there's so much goes to waste. And it's like, oh man. So after next time, I forgot. If he asks me for wine next year, I'm gonna get some, some of the cheaper stuff. Give it to that, or just use some grape juice if you're gonna waste it. But I can't justify such a thing. And if you say it's just our minhag, so perhaps it's a minhag ta'us to waste so much wine. What?
Sorry, I heard that this year, because of Shemitah,
Yeah.
Carmel is going to get their grape juice and make wine. I don't know.
It's not. No. It can't be because the Carmel wines use finer grapes. The stuff that Kedem and Manischewitz and Welch is using are just cheap Concord jelly grapes.
Yes.
The big fat kind, which make that distinctive grape juice. So if you would try to turn that into wine, it's going to be, sweet Manischewitz stuff. It's not the right thing. What? Wait, hold on. Wait, you had a question? No? Okay.
Don't treat at the same that's if there was a conservative and you drink it the next day.
Or it's really the 5th cup. Like you can see in Haggadah to Pesach, it's a remnant of an old minhag that they're trying to bring back, which is the 5th cup, the Maimonidean 5th cup. So you say Hallel on the 4th cup and Hallel Gadol on the 5th cup. That's where it comes from. So I would do that, but I don't have the stamina to drink so much wine. But I think it's a good thing.
So you don't pour it out. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't waste it.
We had a minhag,
Mhm.
say that in Toronto.
Yes.
I don't know if this was correct. After Kos Eliyahu, it would be before the force course.
Yeah.
We would give somebody on that cost, we would give everybody a little bit for this, and then the regular wine for the fourth cup.
They drink this cup between the 3rd and 4th cup.
They would, right, before the Kos Eliyahu would be put out, we'd say.
But everybody would drink from that cup, you're saying?
Yes.
That's not right, because it's against the halacha.
I'm telling you, I mean, as a child, I remember that.
Okay, so maybe, I hope,
Why is it against the halacha?
we saw before, you're not supposed to have another cup between the 3rd and 4th ones.
No, it wasn't, no. Some of the wine from Kos Eliyahu
Was distributed to the 4th cup?
for the fourth cup.
Okay, so that's fine.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the fourth cup.
Okay.
No. Some of the
Well,
wine,
Yeah,
Shirayim, basically, even though he wasn't Hasidic, was, Shirayim was,
oh, yeah, I understand.
okay, so, no, it was part of the fourth cup.
Okay, but where's the rest of the Kos Shilo? So some of the Kos Shilo goes into the 4th cup. What about the rest of the Kos Shilo?
No, he made sure that that it was all used,
Okay, for the 4th cup, for someone's
For-
4th cup.
part of.
Okay, fine. So it's not a waste.
That's mutter.
Yeah. My hope is that as we get closer to actually doing things l'chadchila, especially with the reinstitution of the temple service and the laws of Tum and Tara, we'll stop doing many things. You know that it's bad to have chametz on Pesach, right? You shouldn't have it in your possession. Told everybody that when it comes to slaughtering the Korban Pesach, if there's one individual in the group who owns Korban Pesach, he's ruining it for who owns chametz at the time of the shechting of Korban Pesach, he's ruining it for everybody. Okay, the Kohen who's processing it is liable to lashes. Once people realize the severity of having chametz in the house is, how severe it is to have the chametz in the house when you do Korban Pesach, a lot less people are going to be doing the fictitious sale of chametz when that time comes. We'll realize perhaps we should be a little bit more machmir with bir chametz if the korban is on the line. Okay, the validity of our korban is on the line. Yeah, so hopefully people look forward to that. Just like the other fictitious sale, the heter mechira is not something we're proud of. We use it because we have to, but it's not something that we want lechatchila. We would rather that we keep Shemitah properly, and God sends His blessing in the 6th year, and we'll have plenty from the 6th year. We won't have to juice the grapes of the 7th year, like they used to do, right? There was no talk about juicing Shemitah grapes and then having an otzar based in the Beis Din made a little bit of wine from the grapes that they had, but there wasn't an industry. Then you have to worry about what do you call it, exporting it to Chutz La'aretz and things like that. Let's see over here. When they're talking about hides, the Mishnah said that a person is mimachik the hide and mechatecho. What's mimachik? Mimachik means smoothing the hide. Why? Because the animal is hairy, and its hide has imperfections. But after they tan it, they want to make the hide nice and smooth, because smooth leather is, I guess, more aesthetic than rough leather. And mechatecho means he cut it to size. Omar Rabbi Acha bar Chanina, hashaf bein ha'amudim b'Shabbat chayav mishu mimachek. If a person were to rub, I guess, the skin between the pillars on Shabbos, so he is liable on account of what? Mimachek. What's shaf bein ha'amudim? Look over here. Rashi says that perhaps we're not talking about smoothing the hide. We're using the hide, but the hide itself is not getting smooth. What does Rashi say? Kigon amudei achsadraot shasuyim chalonot. Imagine a large Greco-Roman structure. It is columns and a roof, but no walls, right? And there's chalonot means there's a lot of openings between the columns, just wide open space. So you want to make the floor in between those columns nice and smooth. V'nismachim b'chalonot bein amud la'amud. So they would lean in these walls between individual pillars. V'ashav sham b'karka'it binyan, and he would rub it there on the karka'it. That means the floor of this structure. Okay. Wow. Why? Shenishanin alav kidei she'eh chalak. Okay. The floor where these pillars are standing. So he'd try to smooth out the floor. Chayav mishum mimachek. So there he's chayav for smoothing. It seems that Rashi is talking about smoothing the ground, rubbing these hides in this area over here. Remember that mostly was dirt floors back then. They rarely ever would make something made out of a stone floor or a wood floor. That's much later in history. So they're smoothing the floor. This is similar to the prohibition of sweeping around the house on Shabbos. Nowadays, we sweep our floors on Shabbos. Why was there ever a question that you can sweep your floor not on Shabbos? Because you're filling in the holes in the floor. They had dirt floors. So Tosfos disagrees strongly with what Rashi's saying. Hashaf ben amudim b'Shabbat chayav. Perish Rabbeinu Chanano, dishaf ha'or al ha'amud. No, he's just taking the hide. We're talking about smoothing the hide. It means he takes the hide and is rubbing it against the pillar. Why? Because he could hold up hide like this, and the pillar has a certain width, and he could, it's like it's a good sander. He'll cover a lot of area at once. Okay. V'chein mashma by Yerushalmi, and that's also what we get when we study Yerushalmi. The Rashi pirish sheshaf karka'it shebein amudei chalonot. Rashi seems to say that he's rubbing and smoothing the karka'it. That means the floor that's between the pillars. Velo nihira doesn't seem to be as Rashi says. So halachically speaking, which one do we find in the halachas? So most agree with Tosfos that the mimachek in this case is talking about what? Smoothing the hide. Okay? Using something to smooth the hide. What's the question? It could be. I don't know. If it had vertical grooves and moving it side to side would have a much better smoothing action. I don't know. Do you see any ancient pillars? You could go to Old City Jerusalem. You could see the old types of pillars they used to have, like in the Cardo and places like that. Are they grooved? Okay. Like I said, on the Temple Mount, you could still see pillars of the porticos of the Second Temple. They're still there. They're on their sides, but they don't have grooves. They're just stone, different types of marble. There's 3 different colors that they have, but I didn't see any grooves. You have a question? No? Okay. Let's continue in the Gemara. It's unfortunate. Many of us don't have any experience tanning. Most of us have gone through our lives. We've never salted a hide. We've never tanned a hide. We've never smoothed a hide or cut a hide. Has anybody here ever worked with leather? Ever? No. Anybody have any plans to do so? No. Anybody ever farmed before? So most of this doesn't come up. So yeah, it's good to get out. Go out to the frontier a little bit and get to see some malachas actually happening. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Shlosha Dvarim Sachli Ravashi. Rav Chia bar Abba says that he heard 3 things from Ravashi. He said to him, Mishmei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. They heard from the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. How many hundreds of years were between Rav Ashi and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? But this is a tradition he had. Doesn't mean that there were other stages in the tradition, but they're skipping a few generations. Hamigared Rashi Klon Sa'ot b'Shabbat Chayav Mishum Mechatech. A person who would scratch out the tops of the Klon Sa'ot. What does that mean? The Klon Sa'ot are these columns. I guess you could say like the capital is going to put on top of the Amud. He wants them to have, as Rashi says, Sheyu Rashehen Shavim v'Chadim. He wants them all to have level heads and to be sharp at the top. So he's basically chiseling away at the top. Sonsino translates this as, got their translation sometimes is actually better than what we have. Here it says, planes the tops of beams. Okay, so that's the problem with cutting the side, planing. Anybody ever see they have a type of thing, a large thing, you grab it with two hands and you bring it across the wood like that. It makes actually a whole slice of wood. It's like a peel of the wood come off. What do they call it? A plane? What's called a plane? Yeah. So they use a plane. So anybody, your carpenter uses such a thing all the time. So that is chayav mishum mechatech. That'd be cutting it to size. Hamemareach ritziyah b'Shabbat chayav mishum memachek. And a person who uses a rati on Shabbos, also he spreads it on a wound. People they wanted the type of bandage they didn't have in the olden days. Band-aids, things like that. Sterile bandages are now made out of plastic and have a piece of gauze and have adhesive on it. Most of us are familiar with that. That's who wouldn't use such a thing? What did they use in the olden days? They used to use reeds. Sometimes they would chew something up that's nice and sticky, and they'd spread it over a wound. Right? Usually something of vegetable matter, or they would take some pieces of cloth and put it on the wound. Right? So he said, spreading this riti'ah, or as Rashi says, machlik tachboshet al hamakah. He's basically smoothing out this tachboshet, which is primitive form of bandage, on his wound. So that's also a form of mimachik, smoothing. This is a person who's basically cutting the stone. He's chiseling around the stone, basically the fine edges of the stone. Anybody here ever chisel stone? No one here's a sculptor? No? Okay. How often do they do chisel stone? Jews don't chisel statues out of stone. When are Jews usually chiseling stone? They're making memorial plaques or tombstones. Okay, that's a new thing in Judaism, by the way. It's a European thing. Rambam says we're not supposed to make tombstones, but nowadays we even have a whole ritual. Person passes away, sometime later they have a kamas mitzeva. So how do they make the tombstone? It's a fancy chiseling action, right? So most of us don't do such a thing anymore. And nowadays, I think it's even done by computers. They have they have special technology there. You don't have to have the guy there with the hammer and the chisel. Instead, they have a machine do it, and it's programmed to do so. Anybody ever seen anybody do this? No, don't seen it. Okay, so that's when they still do it. This isn't something that Chazal did all the time. They used to chisel stone because they were trying to make the columns of a house or some other structure look nice, Greco-Roman style. That's what Chazal. That's what they recognized. So that's also makeh b'fatish. Now this is kind of funny because he's actually talking about a person using a hammer and a chisel, and he's saying he's doing the malacha of makeh b'fatish. Is makeh b'fatish on the list in the Mishnah? Well, you look back. Someone who's a better bucky than me could actually tell you. Wait a minute, there's something strange here. That's a form of bonnet. So we're going to say now that we're introducing this idea of makeh b'fatish that perhaps it's code word for something else, right? It means the finishing touches. That's what we have in the Mishnah. Makeh b'fatish. Does that mean every time I take out a hammer, literally, if I bang a nail into the wood with a hammer, is that makeh b'fatish? Or if I hit someone with a hammer, is that the malacha of makeh b'fatish? Or if I just want to make noise with a hammer or crack nuts, that's makeh b'fatish, literally. No, it's code word for finishing the job. That's as we're going to see over here. Let's look at Rashi over here. Rashi explains this. Shehu gemar melacha. It's finishing the melacha. The last touch is, there's a slight imperfection in the stone, so it's makeh b'fatish. Memachik et ha'even, Rashi says before that is lachar shene'ekra minahar v'nechseva machlika. After they uproot it from the mountain, it's been quarried, he says. So they have to actually make the stone smooth. And we have quarries still today here in the land of Israel. They use jackhammers and things like that. It's a much finer science because they make all the stones the exact same size, the exact same thickness. Why is quarrying still a big deal here? In the United States, they don't really quarry to construct. In Europe, they don't. Yeah, yeah, they even use artificial stuff. Okay, a lot of it is not quarried, it's all artificial. So why are we still quarrying stone here, especially around Jerusalem, for our construction purposes? Yeah, well, I understand that's where they get. They're quarrying Jerusalem stone, but why is it such a big deal here? Because one, it looks nice. Two, it's actually a law in the books since mandatory times. The British came here, they took over Imperial Britain, which we mentioned before, and they looked at the old city of Jerusalem. They saw its walls are Jerusalem stone, most of the houses inside Jerusalem stone, and there's a new city springing up around the old city. And in order to preserve the aesthetic of Jerusalem, they made a gzera. All buildings in New Jerusalem have to at least have a Jerusalem stone facade. You could build it out of reinforced concrete, but you have to make sure that you put on the outer edge. You're not going to build actual from actual Jerusalem stone. Like, let's say this building, you at least have to have the facade. Yeah. So yeah, that's the fake stuff. They even bring this to Chutz La'aretz now. Although some places they use a fake Jerusalem stone, you can see it right away. So that's why they even have in certain towns, like in Ramat Beit Shemesh, they're also copying that Jerusalem motif, and they make sure that all the new buildings have a Jerusalem stone facade, which is why quarrying is still a big deal in this country, even though other places rely on, let's say, bricks, reinforced concrete, and the like. Okay, so this is still a big deal. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Kisma, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Different Rabbi Shimons, but they have different fathers, said, Hatzar tzura b'chli v'amanapeach b'chli z'chlit chayav mikdushu makev fatish. Let's say a person were to form a form on a kli. What does that mean? He has a bottle. He wants to decorate the bottle, so he's going to carve into the bottle shapes, flowers, something. As long as it's mutter, you shouldn't make, let's say, pictures of humans on anything. If you were to, let's say, carve a bottle in the shape of a woman holding a bottle, like they used to do in the Greek times, so that'd be a little bit problematic because you're not supposed to do that. It's like idolatry. But you've just put some aesthetics on it. So the problem with that is it's Makev Fatish, finishing touches, or blowing glass. Very interesting. Anybody here ever blow glass? No. Glass is molten. So there are people who still demonstrate this nowadays. Artisans do this. They know how to blow glass, and that's considered the finishing touch on the glass kli. So that's also Makev Fatish, doing the finishing touches. When do we have to stop here? I don't want to go over time or bother anybody. I can continue. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Hai man de shakil akufi miglime, chayav mishu Makev Fatish. He's taking out imperfections from his cape. What are we talking about? This one you could see. Weaving. Okay? They use the loom. They actually have actual looms working in places like Tzfat and also here in the Old City. They'll make you a designer tallis or some other garment. Okay? Well, the old-fashioned way. And it's a lot more expensive. I don't know why it's more expensive, more primitive, but it should be, you can pick any color and they'll weave you a designer tallis. So one of the things they do at the very end is they take out, I guess, the pieces that are imperfect there and also some hanging threads at the end. So if a person does that on Shabbos, that's also the finishing touches. That's not weaving itself, but it's a problem. Rashi says, "Menapeach b'chli zuchit kishehutach na'asai yedei nafua." When you melt the glass, you can form into shapes by what? By blowing. Okay? You use a special type of straw to blow at it, and you shape the glass. And Rashi says here, the shakla kufi rashei chutina tluyin ba'iriyah. These are the stray strings that are hanging from the yiriyah. That doesn't necessarily mean curtain. It means the large piece of cloth as it comes off of the loom. B'makom kishrin kishnitak b'chud uksharuhu. Oh, you remember this one? What they used to do? Why is kshira itself a malacha in the Mishkan? Why is tying a malacha in the Mishkan? Because when they were weaving these large pieces of whatever it is, the yirios of the Mishkan, sometimes a string snaps in the middle. So what do? You tie it up right there. There's a way to do it. There's the right way and there's the wrong way. There's the way that ends up ugly and there's the professional way that is almost seamless. So Rashi says they would tie this, and when one of the strings snaps, uksharuhu, you would get an imperfection there. It says here, kashin uksamim dakin shener guba. Sometimes there's just farm material. There's a piece of straw or a splinter or something that got into the weave. So you have to remove those also. Below mitkaven. Sorry, they got into there. It wasn't on purpose. Vinolimotam mimena lachar ariga, and they take them out after they're done with all the weave. And that's he says gemar malachahu the chayav mishuma kevfatish. So this isn't the actual act of weaving. This is the finishing touches. What are they trying to get at over here? The Chazar are trying to tell you that you could have all 39 malachas there, but for many malachas, there is a makev fatij type of finality that you could add to it. I don't know, is there a makev fatish with regards to cooking or plowing? Probably not. But for the types of malachas that produce an object, there usually is. Okay? Producing food, there's no makev fatish. Although I would imagine, let's say, well, yeah, so that I begin to wonder if I were to have, let's say, a chef needs to cook the Shabbos steak. Forget your cholent. You're going to go for steak on Shabbos. It has to be done right. The problem with steak on Shabbos is normally you want it grilled just the right way and served hot. So you can't do that on Shabbos unless you are actually grilling, and then you say right as Shabbos starts, Mikdash Yisrael Shabbos, eat the steak. Okay, most of us don't get to that point. So you have a chef who's in charge of preparing the food just the way it is, and right before he serves it, he has to apply just the right forms of seasoning. He has to throw in a dash of salt and rosemary and something else, right? So you might want to say that indeed that's the makab of hatish of the malacha of bishul. So maybe you shouldn't. We just said you could salt your meat on your plate a little bit, add some salt and pepper. You could do that on Shabbos. That's not a problem. But what if it's the gemar malacha of the bishul? So apparently, what's the answer? I'm going to guess here that there's no makab of hatish with regards to food, just like there's no ibud for food. It doesn't matter what you do for your food as long as you're not cooking it. If the finishing touch is just putting a drop of ketchup or barbecue sauce and serving it on the plate, that's not makab of hatish already. Okay, the food already exists. Makab of hatish is only considered a malacha when we are dealing with objects, non-food objects created through malacha, which is why, like I said, you don't have makab of hatish regarding plowing. You don't have makab of hatish regarding ha'avara, okay, making a fire, or ma'avir b'shus harabim, the act of carrying in the public domain. There's not going to be a makab of hatish result that you can add on to that. Okay? It's only when you're dealing with these objects, and that's what they all have in common. We have a split second to do a little bit more here. Hold on one second. Here. Hi man de shaka kufe, chai b'shumak tajis, v'hani mili the kapitalahu. And this concern malacha when he actually really cares that there not be these imperfections in the weave. If there's a few, I don't know, we said splinters in here or some other problems that person would want to remove, so that's a malacha. But if it's just incidental, like your kid finds that, oh, look, there's something, piece of foreign object that got woven into here, and he just touches it, tries to remove it, so you didn't care about that to begin with, that's not the malacha. Okay, let's pause for questions. Any questions here that came in over online? No? Okay, so I guess that's a fitting conclusion. Now, that'll be the makab of hatish and what we're learning here.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.